Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you.
Oh. God damn it, Dire.
Welcome back, Wolfpack. Dire Wolf here for our weekly news.
Just
recap.
Barely here.
From Behind Enemy Lines, we're on YouTube, where speech is not free and the truth is demonetized. And of course, my co-host is Fox Trevize.
Hello. I do have a fun name to say. It's vaguely French. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. We had a few tech difficulties. They're completely Fox's fault.
Yes, that's a very liberal use of the word "we." Is that the royal we, Dire?
Yeah, it's definitely all you. Anyways, moving on. So thank you for today's sponsors: Ori Main, Nathan, Cameron, Tetris Freak, Slowpoke, Timberwolf, Golem, Lone Fury, Pablo Gomez, Strongarm, Hellraiser, Zaylon, Kalet, and Daychrist. All of you have
and to
make this
all the viewers like you.
Yes, and everyone else who's donated, we very much appreciate it. But you don't have to donate to help this channel out. Every time you like, share, or subscribe, or follow, you're helping out the channel a lot. And please share us out to your friends so we can help the channel grow. Our next goal for followership, so we can start uploading videos, is actually 1,000. We thought it was the 200 mark. 200 mark makes you an affiliate on DLive, but it does not give you the ability to upload yet. That's at the 1,000 follower mark.
Oh, they clickbaited us.
They did.
Damn.
They totally got us. There was a few benefits they gave us, but not a lot for the affiliates.
All right, well, you heard the man, guys. Let's get those subscribers. All right.
Right. So we also are doing a Dreamkeepers comic giveaway. So for every $2 donated on Streamlabs, you will get, or every 200 bits, or Lino. One second. Can you go into the first story?
Yes, I can. Dire, this one has a little bit of interactive elements to it, so we do need you for it. But I'll tell a little anecdote though. So while we're waiting here, I just got this weird scent of electrical burning. So while Dire left, I may also randomly disappear, and if I do, it might be because my laptop caught on fire. Anyways. Moving on into our first story. Let's see if I can say this slow enough, waiting for Dire to get back so we can play the video when I get done speaking. But our first story is a Florida man hurricane battle plan. After wreaking terrible destruction on the Bahamas, Hurricane Dorian set its sight on Florida earlier this week. And also maybe Alabama, but that's a whole other story. Being one of the strongest storms to hit the Sunshine State in nearly a century, preparations had to be made, including the evacuation of many of the residents in affected areas. The storm was predicted to be so severe that it even prompted the military to move planes and ships to safer locations. But was all of this really necessary? One Florida man says no, and he thinks he's got the solution that could better utilize these military assets while also eliminating the need to evacuate civilians. Let's see what he has to say.
This ought to be good.
They haven't come up with some kind of way to combat these storms yet. They keep saying, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, oh, it's at this, but it's going to hit all this warm weather and warm water. We have a Navy. Why don't the Navy come and drop ice in the warm water so it can't get going as fast as it's going? There's got to be ways to combat this instead of just pointing at the thing and saying, well, it's now it's getting worse. Yeah, we know it's getting worse, but you tell us, oh, it's the warm weather, oh, it's the wind. Well, we have an Air Force. Drive some Air Force planes around to get the winds going the opposite way. Get the Navy to go in circles to fight it the other way. Can't see how they haven't come up with some kind of way to combat these storms yet. They keep saying, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, oh, it's at this, but it's going to hit all this warm weather and warm water. We have a Navy. Why don't the Navy come and drop ice?
Oh, the video restarted. All right, let's Why don't we get this man some stars here? That sounds like some pretty sound military strategy. What do you think, Dyer? You think dropping ice with the Navy and getting the planes to go around the other direction really fast? You think that would work?
I'll be honest. The military needs to hire this man. That is outside the box thinking. Oh my God, how we not
Now,
consider this? I mean, what is?
now one flaw that I see in his plan though is that if the Air Force uses stealth planes, the Hurricane won't be able to see it, so it won't know that it's going the wrong direction.
That would. We might make sure we don't use them stealth planes.
That would be the only way I could see this not working.
Jeez Louise, that is just brilliance.
I do hope that man made it out. As you guys all saw, kind of bringing some levity to the situation. But as you guys saw, obviously that hurricane was absolutely terrifying. The Bahamas is pretty much completely leveled, which is really. I saw some of the numbers from that earlier this week that were 70,000 homeless, and I was like, I want some context for that 70,000 number because that was what was being reported. So I looked up, well, what's the population of the Bahamas? And the population of the Bahamas is about 60,000. So that sounds like all of them and then some. So I think they were hit pretty severely. I know Florida got it pretty bad, but the Bahamas they certainly took a pretty big beating.
Yeah, it's one of the risks of living in that part of the world, of the country. I hope when you get an evacuation warning, heed it. It's not to try to make your life difficult. It's to save your life.
Yep. No, and as you guys remember, last week we took some donations for whatever the relief effort would be. We will be looking for domestic funds first, but it sounds like Bahamas might need it more. But we'll be looking through that in the next week or so and getting you guys back information on what happened with that donation.
Exactly. In any case, I mean, as always, every time I do a donation for the show, I always post the receipt on Twitter so you guys can see who went to and for how much. In any case, let's move on with the next story.
All right. The next story now. Yeah, I'm going to read the title here, but I don't know if I believe it, so we'll have to read through the story here. So the next story is Beto and his family actually ate dirt. That can't be true. Let's see what the story is about. As the Democrat primary candidates roll on, we are learning a lot about the Democratic primary campaigns roll on. We are learning a lot about the candidates. We first found out that Kamala Harris once advocated in favor of slavery, then that Biden can't even remember his own policy positions, and strangest of all, we found out that Beto O'Rourke and his family ate dirt as part of a spiritual ritual to give them more energy after that devastating loss to Ted Cruz.
Not only did Beto and his family literally eat dirt, he did it because he lost to lost his Senate campaign against Ted Cruz. According to the Washington Post, he felt his career was in a bit of a funk, so he decided to try some sort of new age medicine that involved him eating dirt from New Mexico that he believed had regenerative powers. Yes, powers in the dirt of New Mexico. That's basically on par with believing in crystal therapy, dowsing rods, and chili juice. Which brings to mind the question, do the Democrats really want to have someone that believes that eating dirt from New Mexico gives them power as president?
Aren't Republicans supposed to be the anti-science party? Are we supposed to be the crazy ones?
Oh, I thought so. Oh, I heard that once or twice.
Beto's out there eating dirt. He should go try some dirt from San Francisco, and he'll get the power of probably dysentery. I wish I could say that Beta was the weirdest. I don't know if that's a typo or if that's just Dyer calling Beto a beta. Beta was the weirdest candidate running, but eating dirt from New Mexico still isn't as crazy as Marianne Williamson, the self-help guru and self-anointed leader of her own little cult, is also an anti-vaxxer. That's to say, the bar is already pretty low when it comes to Democratic candidates. I'm also sure Democrats are just glad Beto ate dirt from New Mexico rather than Southern California. I do want to issue a slight correction on that. The clarification on Marion being an anti-vaxxer is not entirely true. What she said is that she supports vaccines. She is wary of the state coming in and mandating any kind of medical procedure. That was her position on it, and that got spun into anti-vaxxing. And that wasn't actually the right that spun that into anti-vaxxing. That was some fake news that mainstream media pumped out because obviously she's not a mainstream candidate and they do not like her.
Good fact check. Thank you. It isn't always the far left calling conservatives anti-science. Stories like these really drive home how the left is the one that really doesn't care about science. Let's be honest. We have people on both sides that don't believe in stuff that doesn't believe in the scientific method, doesn't believe in facts. They believe in feelings rather than facts. We have them on both sides, but it seems really hypocritical since they try to paint all conservatives as being anti-science when they have a fair amount of anti-science rhetoric and beliefs on their own side. AOC already.
That's actually interesting you say that. I was just watching Joe Rogan's podcast this week, and he had on Neil deGrasse Tyson, of all people, who is definitely not on the right, but he also made that point as well, saying that it's not just the right that's anti-science. He said there is we went into this whole climate change thing, but he's like, it's not just the right. The left has just as many, if not more, and this is him saying that, the left has just as many, if not more, people who are believing in crystals and astrological signs and all kinds of crazy stuff, getting powers from the dirt. So even he's made that point that it's definitely on both sides, which tends to make me think that has nothing to do with politics. Yeah. It's just crazy people going to be crazy.
Right. AOC already made it clear that the progressive left doesn't really care about facts when she said that it doesn't matter about being factually correct, it matters about being morally right. So of course they're anti-science. The whole I'm not saying all of the left, but the regressive ideology definitely is. So a few examples of this is obviously eating dirt as medicine is not based on science. Blindly believing in climate change, anthropogenic climate change, using and saying that the Earth humanity is going to be dead in 12 years based off of models that have been saying the same thing for the last 40 years is anti-science. I'm not saying that climate isn't changing. I'm saying that they don't have enough research, and they have conflicting research saying whether or not we are the driving factor, but more importantly, that even if we were the driving factor, that it's going to be catastrophic. That's where most of the disagreement in the research is whether or not it will actually be catastrophic to humanity. And they keep predicting, like, in the next 10 years, we're going to have wiped out all these species and all these types of plants, and humanity is going to be gone in 10 years. And it's been wrong over and over again because the thing is, the models they're using obviously are missing out on a lot of information. And I
will say that the funny thing though is that looking at the liberal side of the anti-science and the conservative side of the anti-science, the conservative side of quote unquote the anti-science is saying, hey, you guys propose a scientific theory that doesn't seem to be holding up to reality, and we've got this, we have some counterpoints and counter evidence to what you guys are saying is happening, and then you guys said, we got Buttigieg saying that we're going against God because we're using plastic straws, and then it's at least a scientific argument that we're making here. There's nobody arguing that, yes, other than the left, that like, oh yes, eating dirt and having power crystals, like that has nothing to do with any kind of scientific argument whatsoever. So at least the conservative side, quote unquote, anti-science is still grounded in some kind of science.
Right. Well, at least that faction of the conservatives.
Yes.
Because obviously it's a very large group we're talking about here. There are some anti-science conservatives, but the conservatives, the mainstream opinion, that's that when they say, hey, the Earth is going to end in 10 years, or humanity at least will end in 10 years, and they're like, well, Actually, the information you're providing doesn't say that, and you've been saying that for the last 40 years and have been wrong repeatedly. So I don't believe what you're saying is true based on the evidence I have so far. That's a reasoned argument, and often comes with the "I would like more research" answer, right? But I'm not willing to destroy our entire economy and our entire way of life just because of what you're claiming to be true based on insufficient evidence, right? That's
the end is nigh.
Exactly. They have these doomsday scenarios, but they're basing these doomsday scenarios and their willingness to destroy our entire way of life on something that has been proven to be false. And then to that vein, they say that that conservatives are climate deniers because they actually look into the research provided by the left. For instance, the report that 90% of climate scientists believe in human-caused or anthropogenic global warming or climate change, that claim was false. It's still said today on a repeated basis, but that study was done by two activists, not scientists, who didn't actually read the reports. They glanced over them and then made a judgment call whether or not they thought that the person writing it might have thought that climate change was anthropogenic. And
not to mention, there's a lot of the data that's a lot of the quote unquote hard data that the climate change models are based on are based on a lot of weather stations and historical locations that used to be open fields, and now they're parking lots. And there's as cities grow, they grow into where these weather stations are located at. And there's a very well documented and understood effect that cities generate and retain heat, and they get hotter during the day than what they would as an open field would, and they stay hotter at night. And it could be by as much as 5 to 10 degrees, and it could be really throwing off this base data. We also have, again, this isn't a conspiracy theory. It's documented from NOAA that they had a large swath of their data points for temperatures were quote unquote corrected, end quote, which basically means that somebody went in and said, I think that this is actually 2 degrees hotter, and they just manually moved around the raw data, and they feed this junk data into the system, and they're like, oh, now we got global warming. And maybe those don't throw off the models. I don't know, because we keep asking those questions. We keep asking, hey, do you think that maybe having these weather stations in a city that they weren't inside of a city 10 years ago, do you think that could throw off the temperature data? Hey, do you think that just manually correcting these data points, do you think that might throw off the data a little bit? Those are real specific scientific questions. And I don't know, maybe they don't throw off the estimates, but I don't know, because nobody's answered that.
Yeah.
We just get called anti-science for asking the question.
Yeah. Well, I think what is anti-science is that they keep referencing a non-scientific study that has been peer-reviewed and debunked by those peer reviews, saying that the study was done incorrectly and came to the wrong conclusion. And these climate scientists that were referenced by that study that says 90% of climate scientists agree, they actually debunked the article once they realized that there was their studies that were used as evidence in the study. They debunked it. So I think it's anti-science to reference a non-scientific study and say it's fact, something that's been debunked. I think it's also that saying babies aren't human until they exit the birth canal, and that there's no difference biologically between men and women. Those are anti-scientific opinions to have. Also, believing in socialism, in spite of all the mountains of historical evidence and how it always fails, I think that's also unscientific.
Well, hold on a second, Dara. They just haven't tried real socialism yet.
So just to clear up, science is just a method and a process for learning facts, right? It's not that any fact that the scientific process comes to at any one time is the fact for the rest of all time, right? It is with what study we've done so far, this is what is probably true, but it could be proven later with other scientific processes, right?
Well, and let's break that down for a second here too. Is the the actual scientific method is The proper way to conduct an experiment is to say, okay, my hypothesis. Let's use this the global warming perspective. My hypothesis is that the Earth is warming. So you design an experiment to prove the Earth is not warming, and if that fails, then you always try and prove the opposite. So you make sure you're not introducing a bias. That's the scientific method, is using a null hypothesis, or testing for the hypothesis that's the opposite of what you're actually looking for. But that's not what these experiments are doing. They're going out there, they're cherry picking data, they're doing these meta studies, which means that they're just looking at other people's papers and not actually reading what the final conclusion is. And they're going in there with a defined task of, we want global warming to be true, and we need to prove it. And then they go out and find data that backs that up, and they reverse engineer the science to make sure that it meets up with their conclusion. And that is not the scientific method.
Exactly. And also, one thing that's important when you're doing when you're doing research, doing an experiment, is you need to be able to isolate the thing you're trying to test as much as possible. One problem with climate science is that it is impossible to isolate one thing or a few things in the entirety of the planet and the climate. There is so many things acting on the climate that are not within the ability to control or predict by any climate scientist. It is hard for there to be any workable model. And so far,
at current, there is the solar activity. The sun goes through cycles. We are in a known short uptick cycle. That's known from the astrophysics. But again, if you bring up that, hey, maybe the gigantic fusion ball in the sky, maybe that has some kind of impact on the weather and the climate. And just asking the question is like, hey, do you think that the documented fact, not the theory, but the documented fact that solar output is going into its 20-year maximum, do you think that has something to do with the climate getting warmer? Even asking the question, you are a conspiracy theorist. Yes.
So long story short,
no science for you.
Yeah. Long story short, because we ask for evidence and ask them to rethink their hypothesis when their hypothesis is proven to be wrong, we are science deniers. Yet Beto here eats dirt, and he's not.
Exactly. So, yeah, it's a big ask too. If you're gonna ask me to go vegan and drink out of goopy cardboard straws and eat dirt, you need to explain it to me. And if I have a question, you need to explain that to me too. And they do not want any questions. And this actually goes into the kind of the broader theme that Dyer and I have gone into multiple times, which is the left is kind of the non-theistic religion, and an aspect of religion is that it's the harder core religions. It's not recommended that you ask questions. You are just supposed to receive the edicts from on high and accept them. Do not ask questions. Don't ask questions. Just accept it.
More specifically, it's the social justice ideology, the regressive left. Not all of the left, because I mean, like friggin' Tim Pool's on the left, and he's not a true believer.
We're gonna have to figure out new directions pretty soon, because the left is breaking the two-dimensional political scape that we've got.
I think they're down. Let's just start referring to the regressive left as down. You could short them and say downsy. They're downsy.
Moving on. The next story. Oh boy, we're still on YouTube, Dyer. The next story is the Straight Pride Parade was a joke that the left just cannot understand because they are humorless saps who don't get humor. In the lead up to the Straight Pride Parade, the Antifa types characterized the march as a demonstration for far-right Nazis. Oh man, those Nazis. Ah, damn it, we said the N word. Earn it. Demonetized. Yes. They took the march super seriously. Super serial. And scheduled a large counter protest. When the march happened this week, it was obvious that the march was satirical and not hateful.
The Straight Pride Parade was a bunch of people having fun, all dressed.
How dare they?
I know, right? How dare they? No fun in politics, and dressing up in patriotic and dressing up patriotically with American flags and also pink and blue straight Pride Parade flags. You know, blue for male and pink for female. They're actually hideous flags, but it was funny to me. One of the organizers said it with a megaphone that, "Ladies and gentlemen, people of all two genders, we welcome you." Some people,
and demonetized again.
I know, and some people held. There it is. Got demonetized. Some people held up signs that read, "Make normalcy normal again." and and even the satirical presidential candidate Vermin Supreme was there, and he advocated, that he's always advocating for a good oral hygiene. He has this gigantic toothbrush. He runs as for president every year as a joke. So they're kind of showing that this entire event was a joke. For God's sake, Milo Yiannopoulos, a gay man, was leading the Straight Pride Parade. It was obviously a joke. But at one point, Vermin Supreme actually started a chant with the people at the Straight Pride Parade of, "I want to blank Trump's blank."
Oh, I was hoping for that sound bite. Damn it, Dyer.
I'm sorry.
You knew.
Yes.
You knew. You guys can fill in those blanks. We'll let Slowpo. You can toss in $10, and you can have make Dyer reread that with the proper words.
But obviously, it was something very gay for them to be saying. So obviously, they don't hate gay
well,
people.
It depends on which side was saying it. If it was the ladies saying it, then it would have been fine.
Oh, well, it was a bunch of dudes, but there was also ladies there, so I guess
well,
it was only a little bit gay. But it hardly seems hateful to me.
Yes, that's a pretty well established Nazi chant right there.
Yeah. That's generally what Nazis do. They do the Nazi salute, and then they say they want to suck their leader's dick. There you go. I said it. Already demonetized. Their goal, so the Straight Pride Parade was clearly having fun being ridiculous trolls. Their goal was to troll the regressive left, and they trolled them perfectly. Antifa came out into the event in full force, and they were very angry, and they yelled at racial slurs at people who were just having fun, and they attacked police officers. So I think the Straight Pride people got what they wanted. They looked like they were having a bunch of fun. So anyone watching, they're like, yeah, that's the kind of group of people I want to be with. They're cool, calm, and collected. They're having fun. They aren't actually showing any hate. And then we have this other side that's attacking people, saying racist shit and attacking police officers. So
and I think they had up to 50 arrests. Was it? It was a substantial number of arrests.
Yeah.
And that was from the Antifa side.
Yes, all Antifa. The news did manage to find one dude who wasn't looking like he was really part of the parade. He wasn't dressed up like any of them. And they got him to, on camera, do a anti-Semitic rant. But that was not.
Was it a CNN contributor, Richard Spencer?
No, actually, he's.
Oh,
less,
really?
Richard Spencer is less anti-Semitic than this guy.
No, CNN contributor Richard Spencer.
I'm sorry.
He must have been spending time at the CNN offices, because that's where CNN contributor Richard Spencer usually spends his time at now. Now that he's a CNN contributor, of
right?
course,
Exactly.
As we all know.
But no, it made a nice contrast between the two groups, and I think that's one thing they were trying to do. They were, showing, because this is a big PR battle, right?
Yes.
They're making fun of the regressive left, and by doing this event, the regressive left actually made themselves look bad.
Thank you very much for the ice cream, Timberwolf. But yes, this really highlights the the sad and hilarious truth of the NPC meme because they've stated the organizers of this group very specifically stated closer to the rally that they were doing this just to be trolls. And they even when they tell Antifa, "Hey, we're doing this to bait you into making yourselves look like idiots," and they still do it. They're just these little NPC programs, and they can't help but do it. You can tell them, "Hey, I'm gonna do this, and I know that you're gonna make an ass of yourself," and they're like, "Okay, we won't do that," and then it happens. They're like, "Ah, damn it, you're right. We can't help ourselves. Let's go make asses of ourselves."
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I really think that this generation, or a large portion of this generation, who've gone through certain schools, that they didn't teach them to think critically or even flexibly, and that by teaching them only one way of approaching different situations, they don't know how to change their reaction based on the actual situation. These are the most inflexible minds I have ever seen. You know?
Yes, and the it's funny because if they had even the smallest shred of creative and critical thinking, they would have a much better way of combating this thing that doesn't need to be combated. But beyond that, if they had any critical thinking at all, they wouldn't need to come up with a better way to combat it because they would realize that combating it at all is stupid. They just wouldn't be Antifa if they had any critical thinking at all. They wouldn't be a better Antifa, they would just not be Antifa.
So Aruka asked me a question, very pertinent. I have not finished reading yet. I've been extremely busy. I apologize. I've meant to, but I haven't gotten to it yet. But yes, they're predictable, and that's why people call them NPCs. They do the same thing with the same stimulus. They don't know how to react differently. They don't think for themselves. It seems because they've only been taught that one way of thinking. Very much sorry, Aruka. I'll definitely get to it. I apologize. So the
That's actually and that goes along with some things that Jordan Peterson has said. I knew about last year in an interview he got a lot of heat for saying it, but he said, if one of the big differences between the left and the right is that if I meet somebody from the right or who identifies as conservative or something along those lines, it's like I don't know what they think. I have to talk to them to know what they think. If somebody identifies themselves as a feminist or something, social justice warrior, something along those lines, he's like, I immediately know almost everything that they're going to say. There's no interesting thing to be gained from talking to them because I already know what all of their positions are going to be. They're very, very predictable positions. And he got a lot of trouble for saying that, shortly followed by his interviewer proving his point. But
what makes it worse is they also don't receive new information and respond to it accordingly, as you saw in that interview, right? So they not only do they only have that one response, they don't seem to have the ability to learn a new response by receiving new information because they've not been taught to think critically. So they're kind of stuck, right?
Which again is the classic. That's why the NPC meme so perfectly captures them. It's the exact same problem you have in any role playing game. Is you go do this crazy cool mission, and you come back to talk to the NPC, and he just has the same one boring line that he gives you. There's nothing gained from it. He doesn't recognize. He's not situationally aware. He just has that one script in his head. That's all he's capable of doing. It's not very interesting.
And I think that is a problem of education early on, of extreme indoctrination where someone gets trapped that way. And I don't know if it's possible because when you're young and you're developing your thought processes, your brain will trim off what you don't use as far as like synapses. You create connections. So what you learn early on is the foundation for everything else, what you can learn. And if you limit what you learn to only a few things and not other things, then you'll never learn anything that would have been built upon those foundations.
And that's a lot of that's got a lot to do with a broader conversation about parenting and the education system. But I'm of the belief, rightfully or wrongfully, but I've seen a lot of anecdotal evidence to support it that after a certain point, it's really, really hard to get somebody to figure out how to critically think. If you didn't learn how to critically think as a young person, you're in some rough shape going forward because the human brain kind of crystallizes around 20 to 30. It doesn't have a lot of room to put in those new pathways. If you're not capable of critically thinking by your 20s, by your mid 20s, you're kind of in rough shape for the future, which kind of means that the America's in rough shape for the future because we have this whole population of significant portion of millennials that are now stuck in this. And I hope that we find some way of I'll call it treating that condition. I'm sure I'm gonna get in trouble for that, but that's hopefully I'm wrong about that. But if not, we are in some dire straits with the population of of millennials that we have with that condition right now. Dyer loves it when I sneak the word dire into the script.
I want to point out that if you need a kind of a way to think about someone not gaining the foundation to learn other things, there's a certain age. I forget what age. I think it's somewhere around 5. If you haven't learned any verbal language skill by age 5, you will never learn any language.
Really?
Yes. So that part of the brain that is susceptible to learning language is active before that time. It's different for each person, but it's around that time, right? And then if that foundation is not developed, your brain moves past it. And you don't learn that language. And then the thing is, language and the breadth of to which language you understand also deeply affects the concepts you can understand. Right?
Yes.
Words do have ability to broaden your understanding of the world by developing new concepts and having a word for it. So that's one small example of how setting the foundation or not set the foundation earlier in life can debilitate you for the rest of your life. So let's move on to the next story.
Alrighty. Is it this one? The Times writers? The Times, New York Times, as everybody knows, New York Times is our favorite publication. New York Times writers admit that their thoughts are incoherent babble.
Wow. What an admission. Right? This admission by the writers of the paper of record comes in the form of a book review titled "A 1,000-Page Novel Made Up of Mostly One Sentence Captures How We Think Now." Wow. We here at Direwolf Media are already pretty sure we know how the Times writers think, but let's hear it from their own words.
So, any mystery as to why they picked this book to review? And the title of this book is "Ducks, Newburyport." Yeah, I don't know about that title either. But any doubt as to why they picked this book to review comes in the first two sentences of their review. It reads, "A woman stands in a room thinking. She thinks about Jared Kushner's $400 million business deal in China." Yeah, I'm sure she does, because as we all know, women think of that often. Really, this must be a really riveting story. Anyways, this excerpt gives us our first insight into what is going on in the minds of New York Times writers. And it's a complete obsession with Orange Man Bad.
Surprise, surprise. The article goes on to describe the woman wondering how a bee can tolerate the sound of its own buzzing. While this could be a simple ignorance to the fact that bees have no ears, I think it's more likely a metaphor for the New York Times writers having absolutely no self-awareness.
I agree with that. In the last part of the review, the Times praises the book's complex and sometimes difficult to follow sentence structure. Again, it's all one sentence for 1,000 pages, which, remembering that the title says that this book captures exactly how they think, is probably actually a praise of their own complex and sometimes difficult to follow sentence structure that they use at the New York Times. But as we just stated, New York Times writers have absolutely no self-awareness, and they followed this statement up by saying that the book wasn't actually that complex at all, and that timid and lazy readers should be the first to read it. Again, relating this back to the title of their review, this is actually the New York Times saying that A 1,000-page book written for lazy readers captures exactly how they think. That's amazing.
I knew it. That's why they make new stories off of Twitter because
Yes.
they're lazy.
So if you ever wondered how New York Times thinks of themselves, they think of themselves as a book written for lazy readers.
It makes so much sense now. How?
I completely agree.
All right.
It's yeah, reading this article about this book was so stupid. Like first off, it was just one like run-on sentence, and this woman's just like babbling about like laundry and then things about the Trump administration and then like her kids and then things about the Trump administration. It's like, oh wow, I wonder who this book was written for.
So it was more of a blog post than actually a book review.
Yes, that would have been. I think they just grabbed up all the Tumblr articles and just put them into a book. I think that's what happened.
That sounds like
just
New York
deleted all the
Times.
periods.
That's the paper of record right there.
Yep.
Geez, they've been really, really shitty recently.
I think it's yeah. I think maybe we've just been reading them more recently. I think they've been pretty shitty.
All right.
Anyways, all right. Next story. That
Absolutely.
was just a quick fun one. All right. So, school oppresses women to make trans people happy. Oh wow, that must be the first time that's ever happened. This week, between 100 and 150 students and their parents at a grade school in East Sussex, UK, protested what the school was calling their new gender-neutral dress code, which requires all students to wear pants and restricted girls from wearing skirts. Wait a second.
Wait a second.
Hold on.
The thing about this policy was that it wasn't gender neutral. It required girls to dress like boys. Not gender neutral. This policy only affects girls. There is nothing neutral about it. However, the worst part is the policy change means that all of the females have to buy new clothes after having already bought clothes for the school year. This is a tax just on girls. It's a pink tax.
It's actually like a real pink tax. It's a blue tax.
Yeah.
I don't know. Hey, Lieutenant Knives, you out there in the audience? Good to see you. See here. So one of the students also attempted to appeal. They also tried to appeal to climate change alarmists. I thought I was reading a different story there. I wasn't sure why climate change got involved in this.
It was weird.
Anyways, one of the students also attempted to appeal to the climate change alarmists by saying that fast fashion is the second biggest contributor to climate change.
Not sure that's true. Might want to fact check that.
And girls, well, you wrote it. I don't know if it's fact checked. You should have fact checked it.
Hey, we're quoting her.
Oh, okay, that's right. Yeah, if as long as we're quoting somebody, we can just say anything and present it as news.
That's what I heard from what was the Washington Post? Yeah.
Yes. And they also said that girls should be allowed to wear skirts and that it was both wasteful and expensive to ask parents to buy new clothes, which is absolutely true. That's not just an attack on girls. That's an attack on middle and low income families. That's one of the main reasons to have uniforms. A lot of schools do is because it makes it a lot easier for low-income families to afford, a single set of uniforms than it is for them to try and keep up with whatever the latest fashion trend is. So forcing all of these people to buy, all of these poor females to buy new clothing, that's a pretty heavy burden on their parents there.
Doesn't sound very feminist to me. I left in the first part about the it not being climate friendly and actually being the second contributor because I thought it was funny. That was the argument they went to. Like they definitely have learned from Debate Club to argue towards their audience.
Yes. At least some of these girls have some critical thinking skills. They're like, well, if we're going to be growing up in this world of NPCs, we might as well at least learn how to program them.
Yeah, I'm wondering how you would measure though that fast fashion is the second largest contributor.
What do they mean by fast fashion? Like a fast fashion change, or is fast fashion like a thing?
Fast fashion is when you go out buy new clothes on a regular basis just so you can wear new clothes on a regular basis.
Oh.
So, there was a kid on my basketball team when I was a kid who he had just bought some shoes and then he for like $100, some basketball shoes, and then he gave them to me a week later and says, I asked why. He's like, I'm getting new ones. I like having new shoes. It's like, oh, free $100 shoes. I'll take it.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that was that. I guess that terminology is above our pay grades.
Yeah, I guess.
Anyways, so thank you, Ship Meme Dankpost, for the lemon. We appreciate it. We will be sure to make lots of lemonade out of it.
Mm-hmm. So this policy has actually been in place since 2017, but it only had applied previously to new students. So all the new students have been wearing pants, not skirts, but the older students still who had already bought skirts were still wearing them, right? This month, the rule was extended to include pre-existing students that had already bought their uniforms. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, why did they change the policy in the first place? Well, I'm glad you asked. Well, the school administration said that they decided to make the girls wear pants because of the complaints of a few trans students.
I'm guessing by a few they mean like 2.
A small number of trans students. So because of a few kids who don't fit the norm, everyone else has to change, costing them a bunch of money. That makes sense. They could have at least waited till the school year was over, but they'd already started the school year. They'd already bought their uniforms, and then they were going to force them to buy new uniforms for the remaining 9 months of the year.
I just don't understand so here's kind of that thing where we're capable of at least understanding what the left thinks. We just don't agree with it, but we're capable of empathizing with their position to at least see where they're coming from. So I do understand where they're coming from of like, oh, it'd be great if trans people weren't uncomfortable. I can get behind people not being uncomfortable. That's fine. But the solution to that is not to make every single other person uncomfortable.
Yeah, so Tipper has a great point. If this was really a huge issue, why don't you let the trans students, because that's really what they were going for, wear the clothing they wanted to wear? I mean, that seems like you're affecting the least number of people, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I mean this is how we're going to get to that the dystopian future where we're all in like gray unitards. This is how we get there. Do you want a gray unitard future? This is how you get a gray unitard future.
Yes. Oh, jeez. Your next section?
I do have the next section. Thank you for reminding me. I 100% forgot. And they said that trans students, and they said, quote, trans students, but these kids haven't and shouldn't be transitioning in grade school in the first place. I completely agree. This is just another policy meant to try to pretend that there is no difference between men and women. However, it sure seems like a huge step backwards for the feminist movement that fought hard to be able to wear what they want and express themselves how they like. Now they are being forced to wear men's clothes. Oppressive patriarchy. Literally, it's patriarchy. They're wrapping themselves in patriarchy.
Exactly.
That are so conservative that they are basically Sharia compliant minus the headscarf. Yeah, I better cover up those ankles, ladies.
Yep. Yeah, make them wear long pants and long sleeves. It's almost Sharia compliant. Just need that headscarf. That's the next step. So it makes sense that the students and their parents were a bit upset. I would be too if it was my daughter. And that's why 100 to 150 of them were protesting at the school. The school responded to this by calling the police and kicking them out of the school's grounds and locking the gate behind them.
Jesus.
Call me crazy, but it seems like the school doesn't care about their opinion. I think they might want to start looking for a new school. Or, since this is the UK we're talking about here, maybe a new country.
Maybe. Back to that part about the Sharia compliance. Now I'm not going to go so conspiratorial as to say that this is a deliberate field test for getting Sharia into schools as part of a uniform, but it certainly would set a precedent, right? So if they were able to have a small minority group of trans be able to specifically affect the dress code in such a way, that would at least set the stage for Islam coming in and saying, well, we would also, you did it for the trans, we would like you to do it for us for Sharia. So maybe it's not a deliberate attempt to field test for that, but it certainly will set the stage for that.
Shadow Wolf said in the chat that, to be fair, that women have been below trans people in the victimhood hierarchy for a long time. That's true. They have been. Women by themselves are not that high on the hierarchy. White women are right below white men. They got 1 point towards them.
Basically humans. your humans are not allowed to. They're no longer important of any kind. We need to devote all of societal resources to this 0.01%.
Yeah, because white women are
1% all over again. We need to start a new 99% movement. The 99% of humans that fall into your gender category.
Yeah. Ridiculous.
Stop the oppression.
Stop the oppression. Anyways, this is ridiculous. There's also the UK is pretty far gone already, so I'm not surprised. But it's
hopefully,
still
we'll see if Boris can pull him back. If Boris is still prime minister in a week.
It's not going well for him right now.
Yeah, we didn't have time to put a whole story together for Great Britain and their Brexit plans, and we'll probably hold off on that for at least another 2 weeks because it's still developing quite a bit. But the quick premise on that is that Boris Johnson, who just got elected to prime minister, may find himself not being prime minister very shortly.
Yeah,
for various reasons.
His own party's starting to affect on him.
Yes, I was listening to Sargon doing a live stream explaining some of it, and apparently one of the possible routes that Parliament can go is to declare they can pass a vote saying that Parliament in general is unfit, and it would just somehow it would just dissolve Parliament and not have any way of reconstituting itself.
What the hell?
It's some kind of weird just technicality with the way they're set up.
So what, then the Queen would be in charge again?
I don't know. Nobody knows.
Oh my god.
It would just it'd be a vote of no confidence, but they could vote no confidence on the entire body of Parliament.
They're voting on themselves being unable to work. Oh my god. What a wow. Chicken or the egg.
Yeah. That would be. Yeah, so if anybody's curious as to why we seceded, just look at them.
They're complete nonsense.
Alrighty. Next story?
Next story. For sure.
All right. You get to start that one.
Oh, man, I got to do stuff?
Yeah, I know. It's a hard world.
Just this is one time, though. I'm going to do stuff.
Just this one time? All right.
So, the great YouTube purge again.
Oh, no.
This story is just another reminder of why we are now broadcasting on DLive and Twitch primarily. YouTube has announced 2 weeks ago that they have accelerated their purging of wrongthink on their platform. They said that they have just changed their hate speech policy to be more strict. That's paraphrasing. But in reality, how their hate speech policy is applied is very one-sided. If a conservative criticizes a trans person as being a transgender or claims that there's only two genders, that's a breach of YouTube's hate speech policy. However, at the same time, people like Ghazi Kodzo, openly racist, anti-Semitic, anti-white person Ghazi Kodzo, affectionately named Black Hitler. Ah, geez, I just got it again.
Damn it, we've said that. We've somehow gotten tricked into saying the H word every single stream. This time it wasn't even the fans. You did it to yourself.
I'm sorry. I wrote it into the script. This time actually I ad-libbed it, but
damn it.
So that Ghazi Kodzo and many regressive leftists just like him. He's not unique. He's a dime a dozen. They mock white people, call them cave beasts, and third wave feminists call for the death of all men, open calls to violence, and they can do all those things, and they don't get banned. So it's pretty one-sided.
It seems like they have a bias, perhaps.
You think so?
I do think so. In the most recent purge, YouTube has deleted 500 million comments. They've deleted another 100,000 videos and banned 17,000 channels. Many of these channels weren't even political or conservative-leaning channels. One of their disturbing parts of their purge was that your channel could get punished just because of the comments other people put on your videos. Jesus.
Jeez,
Yes.
Louise.
Exactly.
That is disturbing. You could almost, if they, I mean, it's not going to work on a regressive leftist channel. They're going to ban them because someone says something bad in their comments. But they can do it to you if you're a conservative. They can just go over and say a bunch of really terrible stuff in your comments and get your video taken down, even though your video didn't have anything bad in it. That makes no sense.
Well, you can talk about how America deserved a certain tragedy and how a certain group of no-no people did something naughty to a sitting member of Congress's eye. You can say all that, and they'll put you on front page trending.
You know, you can actually take one of the racist comments, anti-white comments made by the regressive left and repeat it word for word, but change out white for black, and you get banned. That's ridiculous.
It's almost like there's two standards. One might even call it a double standard.
I think it's called a double standard. I think
Is there a word for that? Oh man, wow.
Yeah.
You heard it here first, guys. It's a double standard. We just coined it just now, just us.
We're so
Came
smart.
up with it. Yes, we are.
You can. Don't worry. You guys have permission to use that. I won't charge you.
Yes. I will.
The update to YouTube's existing policy against hate speech, which banned content promoting violence, hatred against people based on a myriad of factors, including ethnicity, gender identity being a big one there. It's ma'am. Immigration status. Oh, so calling someone illegal when they're illegal could be a hate crime or a hate speech. God damn. Those are the things that get you banned. So why do we bring this up? Even though it's kind of, you guys all aware that YouTube sucks. That's because we're going off of YouTube. That's why we're moving over to DLive and Twitch, and that's why only half of our shows are currently broadcast on YouTube. So if you're watching us on YouTube right now, right about in a second or so, I'm going to be turning off the YouTube stream, and we're going to keep streaming on DLive and Twitch. So please go ahead and go to the link below the video in YouTube and go to DLive. Give us a follow if you want to see the entirety of our shows, and it is just a matter of time, because we've just said Hitler 5 times now. That
again, is that the royal weed ire?
Me. That we're gonna get banned on YouTube. Okay, so I was saying we as an organization. All right, so if you're enjoying the show, please hop over to DLive and please give us a follow. Goodbye, YouTube. It's nice knowing you.
See ya. Alrighty.
Wouldn't want to be
now that we're off.